Hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome back to another narrator interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is a narrator making their official debut here on the show. Now, my guest today is a classically trained professional actor and director. He holds a BA in theater from the University of Alabama and his M.F.A. in acting from Southern Methodist University. He began in college as an on-air talent for several professional and public radio stations. And during his time at Alabama, he co-founded Guerilla Theatre, conceived as an arena for students to explore and experiment with various theatrical forms. Guerilla Theatre is still an active part of campus life at the university today. And while at SMU, he organized professional auditions and showcases in New York City and LA. He's a member of both the Actors Equity Association and the Screen Actors Guild American Federation for Television and Radio Artists, SAC. His professional onstage credits include performance with the Dallas Theater Center, Kitchen Dog Theater, WaterTower Theatre, and Utah Shakespearean Festival. He has also starred in various national television commercials from 7-Eleven, Krystal, TN Lottery, and more. Now, as a voiceover artist, he has been featured in several regional and local radio and television ads, and most recently added video games to his resume with the release of the acclaimed Path of Exile II. He also narrates and produces audiobooks for Audible, including Each Dawn I Die, Brightside, and Midnight Horror Show, as well as many others under a pseudonym. He is the co-founder and founder co-host of the weekly podcast, The Inexplicable Dumb Show. The podcast has been an invited guest of the Humana Festival of New American Plays from 2008 to 2011 at the Actors Theatre in Louisville, Kentucky. And I am so excited to have this guest on the show, and many of you may actually know him from his work. And I am so excited to have him here. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, narrator, actor, and director, T. Quillin. T, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome, T. So excited to have you here. Now, before we dive into your background, which is very extensive, as a little icebreaker question, sure. What's a random fact about you, T, that not many people know?
That not many people know. Well, that's not like publicly known, I guess, would be that I wouldn't say I'm like active with it, but it's still a true statement. I'm a ham radio operator. It's like amateur radio operator. Started out doing that like as a storm spotter. I'm too old to do that now. I don't have the energy for it anymore. Yeah, I'm still. I keep my license active, and so yeah, I'm a ham radio operator as well.
Awesome, yeah. T. Now, are there any current projects that you are working on that people should be aware of to add to their TBR, or as we should say, TBL, to be listened to?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was recording this right before we started the interview. Late last year, I believe this was my first release as a podium narrator. Was the Obsidian Sector, or if not, it was one of the first as a podium narrator. It's called the Obsidian Sector. 3-book series, science fiction, military science fiction type of thing. I think they sort of promoted it as kind of a Star Trek meets Battlestar Galactica type series kind of thing. I fell in love with the books anyway. It's written by Rhys Landon, and I knew that there was going to be a continuation of the series. They all end on these really awesome cliffhangers and all of that stuff. And the 3rd book ended on a really big cliffhanger, and I was like, I gotta finish this series. Just like a couple of weeks ago, found out that I was going to be continuing the series as the narrator, and so I just started recording those a couple of days ago, and I was continuing to work on that. So they will be coming out. I'm going to be recording books 4 and 5 back to back. And I'm not sure of the release dates yet. I don't think they've set release dates yet for those, but they will be coming out pretty quick. The books themselves have already been released. They're available on Amazon, probably Kindle, that kind of thing. But the audiobooks will be released pretty soon after production is done, I think. So
awesome. All right.
I've got a couple more books coming up from Tantor as well. And of course, lots of releases coming up under my pseudonym.
Awesome. All righty. All right. Now let's dive into your journey into the world of acting and performance. So from your bio, it seems to me that you started in the world of theater before you transitioned into voiceover work for ads and radios, and then eventually the world of narration. So what inspired this passion for the performing arts? Were you always intrigued of that growing up, or did it come later in life? And is there a specific moment, your aha moment, that really sparked this passion and curiosity?
The passion for it's pretty much always been there. I like to joke that growing up as a kid, I pretty much was Indiana Jones, you know, running around my backyard, jumping over little mud puddles that I pretended were the deep pits, you know, in the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie and all that stuff. Having all kinds of adventures in my head, you know, that kind of stuff. So I mean, there was always a drive toward that type of interactive storytelling, even if it was just in my head, even if I was the only one enjoying it, there was some kind of storytelling that was going on, you know, that kind of thing. So that part of it's always been there. I didn't think about it in terms of making it an outward expression until I got into high school. I played musical instruments, mostly by ear. I had a horrible experience when I took piano lessons really, really young. I had one of those piano teachers that would sit and make you hold your hands, you know, at the right angle, and they would like smack your wrists with the ruler if you let your hands drop and all that kind of stuff. And I hated it, and so I quit. I took it for like a year and a half or something like that, and I told my mom, like, I'm done. I don't find it fun. And so I quit, but I kept playing. We kept the piano and I kept playing, but I would play by ear. I would sit down and pick out songs. I would hear something that I like and I pick it out and I play it. So I kind of followed music mostly. So in high school, I went into band, right? I was in the band and marching band and that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until my senior year in high school that I got involved with the theater crowd, right? And I don't remember exactly how it happened, to be honest with you. It was, I think it was more or less just kind of a combination of things. But my senior year, one of the local community groups here in my town was doing a production of A Christmas Carol, and I auditioned for that. And so that was my first like real role, where I was like on stage in costume and all that kind of stuff. And then it really pretty much just didn't stop. When I went off to college, I was going to pursue a career in the recording arts, like being a recording engineer. And so I didn't really pursue theater too much. But I was the girl that I was dating at the time was taking a theater appreciation class, and she came back from one of the days of class, and she was like, "Hey, by the way, I know you did some theater in high school. They're having auditions for a show. If you're interested and you want to do it, go have fun and see what happens." And so I auditioned for it without being a theater major and wound up with the lead role in the college production and irritated a whole bunch of people, because I was this non-major that was coming in, took the lead role away. I then became a major and made a whole lot of really good friends that way and all that stuff. And then I just didn't stop. I was pretty much doing theater from then on out, either at the educational level or professionally, in some form or fashion. In the midst of all of that, I took a job. One of my first part-time jobs at the university was I got a job at the local campus radio station. I was looking for a part-time job and wanted to do something that I thought would be kind of cool, and didn't want to do something like working in fast food or something like that. I just wanted to do something that would, be fun. And went in, they showed some interest. I did a little bit of training. They had me record a demo tape, and then the next thing I know, like 2 weeks later, after a little bit of more training and stuff like that, I'm on the air as a disc jockey for the local NPR affiliate radio station on campus. It's an FM radio station that played jazz and blues, but then they would break away and pick up some of the NPR news programs and that kind of stuff and all that. But I was spinning jazz records, and that kind of thing. And then I'd break away and read like news briefs or weather or whatever, that kind of thing. But I would do that, and then I would, commercials, that kind of thing. Got a job at local commercial stations and that kind of thing. And so that kind of led from one thing to the next. That led to recording commercials, doing voiceovers, narration for, local industrial commercial or local industrial things. And that just kind of never stopped.
Nice. Yeah. All right. That's amazing. That is really amazing. So now let's actually go into the day-to-day life of UT, the behind the scenes of being a narrator and an actor, because I really like highlighting, the who we are beyond our creative side. So let's start at the very beginning. So when you got into the world of narration beyond doing ad commercials and actually diving into scripts for books, what really surprised you about that aspect of the narration voiceover industry?
What surprised me about it? I think the thing that surprised me about it was how much fun it was, honestly. There was a part of me that was like, I loved listening to audiobooks. I had been an audiobook fan for, God, since I was a kid. I would go to the library and check out the books on tape, on cassettes. That I'm aging myself there, but I would check out the audiobooks on cassette from the library and bring them home, and I'd listen to them. And that kind of thing. I'd listen to them as I went to sleep at night, that kind of thing. And I still do that. I still do that. It's just not on cassette anymore. It's on, the Audible app. But I remember thinking, as I started getting into working at the radio station, doing those kind of commercials and that kind of stuff, that reading a book and coming up with the different character voices and that kind of thing would be a lot of fun. I had an agent in Nashville as I started out working in the profession, and was getting commercial, like local commercial acting, on-camera acting work and that kind of thing. But out of the blue one day, my agent sent me an audiobook, asked me if I would be interested in narrating an audiobook. Yes, was the immediate answer. Absolutely. It was a nonfiction book, but I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, let's just start, right? Let's just start. That narration is no longer available.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I checked it I checked it a little while ago that for whatever reason, so every now and then Audible will make certain narrations or certain releases of books or whatever unavailable, that kind of thing. This is one of those that was unavailable, but it was also like 20 something years ago. I recorded it on what little equipment that I had at the time in my closet with no prepper. I mean, I was like, can you do it? Yes, absolutely I can. And, and then I like hodgepodged something together, and I'm sure it probably sounded horrible if I went back and listened to it again. But I did it, I did it. And, now that I'm thinking about it, there was one other thing that I did that was an unofficial thing that has not ever been released publicly. But my, and I just know this spurred this memory. My grandfather, before he passed away, wrote down his memoirs of his time in World War II, and without any of the equipment. I did it with like one of those awful like video game headset type of microphone things, and a mini disc recorder of all things. I recorded for a Christmas present for him, just for him. I recorded me reading his audiobook and gave it to him on a CD. So that, I guess, technically was my first audiobook, was my grandfather's memoirs from World War II. Unofficial, of course. And then I went through, and then I didn't do any more. I had a couple books from them, and I think that was just kind of a test market type of thing from my agent. And then I didn't get anything else for a good long while. What surprised me about it, though, was how much fun it was to just like step into a closet and read. That first book that I did was like 10 or 15 hours, something like. It was like a really long book for a nonfiction book. But it was interesting. I mean, the topic was, it was the story of entrepreneurship in America. You know, I mean, it was at least quasi interesting. It was interesting enough to keep my interest. You know, I'm kind of a history buff when it comes to that kind of stuff too, so I enjoyed that. Yeah. So just as long as the topic is interesting, it's fun to read. You know, it's fun to read this, and then to be able to read out loud is even, you just add that to it, you know.
Absolutely, T. Now, as I've been talking with a lot of narrators, you know, on the show, from Amber, Lauren, Sammy, Hell, and many more, I've learned that there seems to be like a uniform schedule or routine that a lot of narrators have. And I'm kind of curious if you fall in the same pattern, where most of the times narrators usually do the narration in the evening, because mostly everyone's gone to bed, and if they have children or young ones, they're already in bed, and so no one's going to be up. Or on the off chance, they're usually up at like 3 a.m. doing recordings because everyone's still asleep. Right. So for you, T, what is your schedule like, and how do you balance, you know, the narrator side of you with the person that you are, with your other duties and responsibilities?
Gotcha. It's a good question. Mine is similar to that, in a way. So I'm also balancing being a narrator with another full-time job. And I say another full-time job because just in the past, really in the past year, 2025, I would say, is when audiobook narrating took on enough of a life of its own to qualify being considered a second full-time job. There was enough work there, or for lack of a better way to put it, there was enough income there to qualify it as a second part-time job or a second full-time job, rather than just something to help supplement an income kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm really at this point balancing 2 full-time jobs. So I will get up in the morning and I will go work my day job in the morning, and then I will get home in the afternoon. And as it stands now, with the quantity of work that I have lined up, I pretty much come home and I might change clothes, grab a little snack of something, and then I'm immediately in the booth and I record until late evening or until dinner time, whatever that, you know, whichever comes first, you know. And then as I'm going to bed, I'll take my iPad in and I'll do whatever little book prep I can get done before I fall asleep, before the next day. And then I get up and do it all again. And then I'm recording a lot on the weekends, which I know a lot of narrators will try not to do marathon sessions, but the way that my setup, or the way that my schedule breaks down, I pretty much have to do marathon sessions on the weekends in order to be able to keep up with the quantity of work. I'm thankful for the vocal training that I had at SMU, because that has come into heavy play in terms of keeping my voice healthy without straining it, without
Right.
without dealing with a lot of vocal fatigue. Now, do I deal with vocal fatigue? Absolutely. There have been some books that, especially as my pseudonym, some of the books that I've done a couple of like Dragon Shifter type series books, where there's a lot of deep voice type of, those type of characters. And when you're reading an entire book like that, it can take its toll. And learning how to place that sound in your voice without having it cause a lot of strain is very helpful. But after a while, though, after doing it for a long time, it does take its toll, especially if you're doing marathon sessions. So just keeping track of it. I mean, I'm drinking throat coat tea right now because I'm doing another marathon session today, and all of that. So my schedule probably doesn't look exactly like what you described. I do try to get a full 8 hours of sleep, or at least as close to it as I can.
Right.
But I'm also having to get up, and be at work by 7 o'clock in the morning for my other day job, as well, and balancing that out.
Absolutely.
I mean, on top of family life and all of those other things as well.
Very true. Very, very true, T. Now, we're actually going to delve into some round of fan questions, and they're actually going to be sprinkled throughout the interview. And one fan question from one of my viewers would like to know, how do you make the characters that you are either assigned to authentic and unique to the story that they are in?
Oh, that's a good question. So I have done books before, really early on in my career, where I would literally get the script, I would hit record, and I would just do a cold read of the book, and that would be what I would turn in. And I would make up voices on the fly. And if I felt like I needed to record them and go back and listen to them again so that I would know what the voice sounded like, I would, that kind of thing. Now I don't do that anymore. Now I'm doing a full read through of the book. I'm highlighting characters in different colors, that kind of thing. I think it's crucial to do that, because it does a disservice to the characters, I think, to not really get a feel for, because if you're doing it on the fly, you might voice a character that has like 2 lines, and you don't know whether they're going to have those 2 lines in that chapter, and then they don't speak again.
That's true.
And then they might have those 2 lines in that chapter, and then they might be the dominant character for the rest of the book. You don't know. And so by just coming up with a voice off the top of your head, you're not giving them the full credit or the weight that they're due, with the consideration of what it takes. I mean, all of us develop a voice. We develop our own voice over time, and it's a combination of it's a combination of our background. It's a combination of the influences that we had. It's a combination of a lot of different things. And taking all of that into consideration when creating the character's voice, it's physicality, it's the way that their faces, especially if the author describes what they look like, the way that they look will determine what a character sounds like. I mean, I had in one of the books that I read, it's a fantasy series. One of the characters was described as an orc character. It's a fantasy book, having huge tusks that came out past his lips. And so I did the voice for him and tried to make it sound as much like that as I could. Tried to make that sound. And it was a bold choice. It was a difficult choice, but it was right for the character.
Absolutely.
So it's those kinds of things. You factor in all of that stuff. Personality, I think, is as much a part of it, especially in something like the Obsidian Sector, which I'm reading now. The wide variety of personalities that come together when you are talking about a ship's crew, and the wide variety of people that have to come together and learn how to work together as a crew, to be a cohesive unit, is incredible. And I would say that that's true not just of these spaceships, but I would say that that's true of our current Navy. You know,
Mm.
all kinds of diverse backgrounds, and well, I mean, any military, not just our Navy. I don't want to take away anything from any of the armed services, but to be able to take all of those diverse personalities and backgrounds and have them come together and work as a cohesive unit is not a small task. You know, it's not a small feat. And I think that by giving them a unique voice is paying homage to that, you know.
Absolutely,
Even
100%.
if you're a small character, I think that they deserve it. So,
very well said, T. Very well said. Now, kind of going back a little bit, when you got into the world of narration, after, as you mentioned before, you read your grandfather's memoir from World War II, and then worked on some other projects, and then, of course, getting into now this series and continuing this series. Ultimately, whenever you're working with a new client or a returning client, what is the mentality you go into for a new project or a returning project? And ultimately, what is the promise you're making, not just to yourself as the narrator or one of the narrators on this project, but also the promise you're making to the author and their readers?
That's a really good question. The approach that I would say, my overall approach to any book would be first and foremost to tell the story. And I know that sounds simple, and it sounds like a simplistic cop-out answer, but I promise it's not. Ultimately, that's the job, right? People will, listeners, and I throw myself into that category too, because I'm an avid audiobook listener. When I go through and I buy an audiobook, I want to be wrapped up in the story. I want to get lost in it. The same way that I would if I were reading the story, you know. I want it to be, I want to have the pictures painted in a vivid sense in my mind for me, if that makes any sense. When you're listening to an audiobook, they're painted in a different way for you in your mind's eye than if you're reading it. It doesn't, they're not, one is not better than the other. I'm obviously I'm not saying that, but it's just a different way. Your mind processes the oral input versus the visual input from the words on the page differently. My job is to take that visual input as I'm reading it and to process those words in such a way so that it is as complete an oral picture as possible. So first and foremost, it's to tell the story. Secondly, though, I think it's to make sure that each character has their voice. And I don't mean their character voice, what they're sounding or what their voice sounds like. One of the best bits of advice, or one of the best bits of acting teaching that I got, was that when you're playing a villain, most villains don't approach being a villain as though they're the villain in the story.
Correct.
They think that they're the hero in their story.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm reading a villain, unless it's just overtly written in such a way so that they're meant to be played as, or they're written as the stereotypical, mustache twirling type of villain, every one of the villains has a point of view that they're coming from. And that point of view, they've chosen this path that they're on because they believe that it is what's right. And that's not always the easiest thing to do.
No.
That's not always the easiest thing to do, is to get behind somebody's mentality when you look at it and read it and go, there are some really horrible things that this character is doing.